Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We are live, we are national. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to get into a bunch of stuff tonight because, of course, no shortage of news coming out of the White House. As well as some international stuff, and we've got some domestic stuff going on. So let's give this a quick little rundown here. There was a near miss. A Southwest Airlines jet was landing at Chicago Airport, and next thing you know, it sees right in front of it a small private jet landing right in front of it, kind of perpendicular to it, and it has to pull right back up, and it goes right back in the air. I can tell you, I've never been on a plane that's done that. You know, after touching down, it just went right back up, like within seconds. Kudos to the Southwest pilot who was flying that and was able to pull that maneuver off. Of course, you know, I'm sure everybody's going to say somebody somewhere was DEI. I tend to think that's an oversimplification. It's probably not even true. I would not be surprised if that's not true in the least in this scenario. I would say even in most. I don't really believe that that's the issue here. I believe it's probably something more sinister. But what do I know? So that happened today, though. That's a real thing. And now, let's see. There's a lot going on here. Let me see where I can go here. White House Correspondents Association is up in arms. Why? Because the press secretary of the White House, Caroline Leavitt, she's announced that they will no longer determine who makes up the press pool. Look at that pulling rank. So good for her on that front. And Jasmine Crockett, she was asked by the media about her thoughts on Elon Musk, and listen to what she had to say.
If you could speak directly to Elon Musk, what would you say?
Off.
Yep, you heard that right. She'd say, bleep off, F off. Oh, man, you got to love her. She's terrific. And I think I have a clip of Robert Garcia. We'll dig that up for a little bit later. The congressman saying that we need actual weapons. Actual weapons. He says, we got to bring actual weapons to this bar fight, is what he said. Imagine if I said that. Imagine if anybody said that. Unbelievable. Anyway, I want to get into some of the big news here. Some of the big news looks like Trump is teasing that he may have a potential deal with Zelensky, and teasing now that he may, in fact, come to the United States to sign the deal. Right in Washington, D.C., President Trump suggesting earlier today that Ukrainian President Volodymyr, I didn't say it right? One of our Ukrainian callers set me straight the other day, is Volodymyr Zelensky, may pay a visit to the White House later this week to sign off on an economic agreement that would allow the United States to reap benefits of Ukraine's supply of rare earth minerals. Love that. It's a good plan. I hear that he's coming Friday, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office. Certainly it's okay with me if he'd like to. Trump is in his element. You know, I think Trump spent that first term with people going, listen, this is the United States of America. This is the federal government. This is not a business, okay? You can't run this like a business. And him, you know, trying to take the wisdom of 100% of the people around him, trying to do it. And I think this time around he's figured out, you know, guys, I actually knew what I was doing then, and I know what I'm doing now. And I'm not listening to you anymore. And the fact that he's running it like a business is why we're doing so well so quickly, right? He's got everything firing on every single cylinder. He literally has announced a new plan to raise $50 trillion that would completely pay off the 30 some odd $1 trillion we have in debt and leave some left over. Now, how feasible is it to bring in that many people into our country. Well, that's the caveat, and that might be the challenge. But I want you to listen to this conversation in the White House as he was answering questions. Him and Howard Lutnick, they announced the rollout of something called a gold card, a Trump gold card. Now, it's not a credit card. This is a green card with gold benefits, right? It's really an interesting idea, and it's just like the mineral deal. It's just like building Gaza. It's just like the sovereign wealth fund. He's turning the United States into something that can capitalize on all of its assets and all of its benefits. And this is yet another one. People want to be Americans. Why don't we just let in the people that are willing to pay $5 million in order to get a green card? Listen to this.
We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges plus. It's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful. Never been done before or anything like this, but it's something that we're going to be putting out over the next, would you say 2 weeks, Howard?
So, again, now he's talking to Howard. He says, right, in the next 2 weeks, Howard. And Howard Lutnick chimes in, saying that this gold green card, right, the gold edition of the green card, would effectively replace the EB-5 program. Listen to this.
The president said rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with the Trump Gold Card, which is really a green card gold. So they'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government. They'll have to go through vetting, of course. We're going to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. They can come to America. The president can give them a green card, and they can invest in America, and we can use that money to reduce our deficit. Why do we give out lotteries of green cards? Why do we give out EB-5 for green cards? The President of the United States understands that the right answer is why don't we eliminate the deficit of the United States of America instead?
Well, how about that? A president that's talking about eliminating the deficit. I love it. I love this plan. Now, Trump elaborates on it. And again, ambitious, but if you're a guy that got shot in the head, happened to look to your left and or to your right, and all of a sudden, wow, you get to live, I'd be ambitious too. Listen to this.
And we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. $5 trillion.
Wow.
And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. What say about that?
Well, many other countries, by the way, do this, including, of course, your 51st state does that.
And the money's earmarked for deficit reduction?
It may be earmarked for deficit, but it actually could be more money than that. I mean, if you did 10 million, it would be, you'd have $15 trillion left over. But generally, it's going to be paid down debt, yes.
Do you need Congress for this? Do you think you need
No, we don't need Congress, no. Because we're not doing citizenship, we're doing the card. It's a path to citizenship, a very strong path to citizenship, but we're not doing the citizenship. For that, I'd have to get Congress.
And would all countries be eligible for this gold card?
Depends. The countries largely, the people will be vetted very carefully.
Again, that is El Trompito in the White House today with Secretary Lutnick breaking down yet another business-minded idea to bring money into the United States. Just imagine that. So under Joe Biden's watch, we have anywhere between 10 and 20 million new illegal aliens in our country that have been taken from the United States. Maybe not all of them, but, in large part, the Roosevelt Hotel and other hotels all over New York City, as well as other places, public assistance, all sorts of aid, contracts to non-governmental organizations that are transporting these people around, and not to mention the flights that occurred oftentimes in the nighttime or in the wee hours of the morning. All of that to say this thing is bankrupting America. Trump comes up with a plan that says, if I could sell 10 trillion of these things, we pay down our debt, and it's the same 10 trillion people, maybe not the same, but a same 10 million people with $50 trillion difference in the price tag, right? And one we lose money and the other one we make money. How's that for a business proposition? I got to tell you, I love it. Again, I'm sure there's some kinks that need to be worked out, and we've got to, mull it over, make sure it's a feasible idea. Are there 10 million people that want to pay $5 million a person? And obviously, I'm sure China would be the first ones to line up. I think we don't want that, but we want to make sure that we have a market for that. I'm guessing that these guys know more than I do on that they probably have a plan in place. But either way, fascinating idea. So that's one more feather in the cap of Donaldus Magnus. And, of course, DOGE. DOGE continues to fire on all cylinders. We're going to get a little update on DOGE and see what's going on there, as well as some of the other things that are happening in the government, like yesterday or was it the day before, when AG Pam Bondi said that she's got the Epstein list on her desk. People want to know what's going on. Who are these creeps? Who's being protected? Who's who and what's what? We're going to find out about that as well with Seamus Bruner, who's going to be, Seamus Bruner is joining us momentarily. So keep it locked right here, folks. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
DOGE is updating its savings tracker, claiming it's now clawed back $65 billion in government spending.
Elon is doing a great job. He's doing a great job.
With the full support of the president, Elon Musk has also launched a leaderboard showing which government agencies have saved the most money. The current top three: the Department of Education, General Services Administration, and EPA.
We have had elected official after elected official promise to get at waste, fraud, and abuse. And here we have a president with promises made and promises kept.
DOGE uploads many of its receipts, but about $38 billion in savings hasn't been explained, and hundreds of canceled contracts have already been paid out. And there's still confusion over a mass email sent to federal employees asking them to list 5 things they accomplished last week. The email said workers risked losing their jobs if they didn't respond by Monday night, but Musk says those who didn't now have a second chance to comply. Washington's HR department says individual agencies should have the final say in whether employees lose their jobs. In Washington, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
So that's what's going on with DOGE. And there was a report earlier today, and I tweeted that if it's true, then I'm very, very happy with President Trump and Mr. Musk, because I'm happy that people, even on the DOGE team, are quitting, saying they're cutting too much. I think that's exactly what we need, is cutting too much, right? I don't care about these arguments that these people make. There's no way we're going to be, a good friend of mine today told me something about, I can't believe what they're doing to our national parks, because they're laying people off. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, with the amount of debt we have, the amount of problems we have in our country, and people are upset about national parks. But I respect their opinion. Anyway, I want to get the opinion of somebody who's following this very closely. He's the author of the book Controligarchs, Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and the Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life. Seamus Bruner, welcome back, sir.
Rich, it is great to be with you. Very exciting times. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. And Seamus, I want to get your take on what's going on with DOGE, because there's Fox is reporting that there are grumblings coming out of closed-door sessions of Congress. You've got the actual DOGE employees. Again, if it's true, some of them are saying that they're quitting because they're cutting too much. And then there's me saying, keep cutting. What's going on?
Yeah, well, I'm with you, Rich. Keep cutting. $65 billion. It's great, but it's hardly a drop in the bucket when we're talking about trillion-dollar deficits and tens of trillions of dollars in our national debt. The interest on these debt payments, as many know, is surpassed the annual defense spending of the United States. So the spending of our government is a national security threat. It has grown out of control for far too long. And so I say keep cutting. I think the media is constantly trying to gin up stories where there's some people out there, but actually the polling, it shows just the opposite. I saw a poll just recently, 72% of Americans, both left and right, agree that DOGE should be cutting a lot of this stuff. I mean, nobody's going to notice in most of these things. I guess the people who are working from home and filming TikTok videos, the so-called federal employees, they might be out of jobs. The same thing happened, by the way. This is why Elon Musk is the right guy for this job. The same thing happened when he took over Twitter. They said it was going to fall apart. He was going to run the company into the ground. He laid off major chunk of the staff, and the app has never been better. It's never been more profitable. The profit numbers for Twitter are great. And so in terms of like government spending, profit would be a good thing. We never have a profit at the federal level, but cutting waste, cutting the fat, that is a very good thing. And it's really that DOGE is exposing these money laundering schemes. These are money laundering schemes. These large programs, you look at USAID, where maybe it doesn't fit the legal definition of money laundering, but it is cycling money back into the pockets of Beltway insiders, and those are the people who are going to be griping the loudest.
Seamus Bruner, I love this. And, the term money laundering, I think it gets under some people's feathers. For some, on my side of the aisle, they love it. They're like, yeah, throw them up, lock them up, throw away the key. For others on the other side of the aisle, I think they think it's too much hyperbole. But I think you hit the nail on the head here, right? Because what's really happening, and we haven't been able to prove it just yet, but we saw a lot of this with Dr. Fauci, right? With the Echo Health Alliance and his organization that was a part of the NIH, where they were giving this money, and when he was under oath, and we were saying, "Hey, did you fund the gain of function research?" He, with lots of certitude, said, "No, I'm not funding anything," because he was giving a grant to the Echo Health Alliance, who was in turn funding that stuff. And I feel like that's exactly what's happening with USAID, whether it's regime change in foreign countries or payoffs or quote unquote foreign aid. They're doing things, with money transferred here and transferred there, perhaps to this group, that group, or the other group. But the money changes hands so many times you can't really tell where it goes. And I think this is part of the obviously part of their plan to conceal things. But it's also part of the problem that we face.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do not think it is hyperbole. I think there's criminal activity that has gone on here. I mean, I'll give you two examples. One, you look at the Haiti earthquake, and I remember I worked with Peter Schweitzer. We worked very hard on a book called Clinton Cash. Some of your listeners may remember that book.
I remember, yeah.
And we blew the lid off of the Haiti scam, and USAID set up a thing called the Haiti Mobile Money Initiative that gave contracts to Clinton Foundation donors. Now,
pause right there, Seamus. We're going to come right back because that's a juicy story, and I don't want to cut you off. And we've got to take a quick pause here. Folks, we're coming right back with Seamus Bruner, Director of Research at the Government Accountability Institute and author. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says she's reviewing the release of more documents related to Jeffrey Epstein's case. A stack of files sits on her desk. signaling it's only a matter of time until they're made public, which could include his client list.
President Trump has given a very strong directive, and that's going to be followed.
Epstein, a convicted sex offender, was awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges in 2019. He was later found dead inside a New York City prison, officials ruling the manner of death as a suicide. The former entrepreneur had high-profile connections, both as friends and business partners, which drew interest in who would be implicated for committing sex crimes. Both Bondi and President Trump have pushed to release records of anyone who flew on Epstein's plane to his private island, where prosecutors believe the crimes occurred. Court documents were unsealed before Trump's second term by a federal judge who determined the names of 175 individuals didn't need to be withheld. This list differs from what Bondi would release because none of the names were accused of wrongdoing. Trump, former President Bill Clinton, models, actors, and Britain's Prince Andrew were among those named, along with victims of sexual abuse.
Wow, named. A former president, Bill Clinton, named on the Epstein list. Man, this is getting juicy. Well, I want to wrap up this story with Seamus Bruner. He's the author of Control Oligarchs, Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and the Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life. And Seamus, just a moment ago, we talked about how Bill Clinton, or how the Clinton Foundation had gotten their hands into some of this USAID money during the Haiti earthquakes and the aftermath thereof. And that doesn't sound too differently than what's going on with this Epstein list. And we'll get to that in a moment. But let's put a finer point on that. Seamus.
Yeah, Rich, great to be back with you. So the Haiti story actually does have a significant overlap with the Epstein story. And there's actually quite a few Clinton Foundation donors who visited the island and flew on the jet with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it's important for people to know, a lot of people talk about a so-called client list, and I'm not aware of a client list. A lot of people conflate the flight logs with a client list, and as that clip you just played a moment ago makes clear, just because someone flew on a plane or was photographed at a party, that does not mean that they are guilty of engaging in underage sex trafficking and crimes like that. But what we do know is last year in court, the bank J.P. Morgan, this was Epstein's bank, admitted that they had facilitated the victims of Jeffrey Epstein sued the bank because it was central to his operations. It's where the money flowed in and out of his accounts. The bank actually admitted in court that they had facilitated over $1 billion in human trafficking related payments. And then they gave all those records over to the Treasury Department. And of course, the Justice Department would have them too. And so for Attorney General Pam Bondi, I'm sure that she is looking at this. You need to follow the money because that is for services rendered. And J.P. Morgan has already admitted culpability. They paid out hundreds of millions of dollars. I think a settlement close to, it was $365 million to avoid going to trial. So insofar as there is such a thing as a Epstein client list, the bank J.P. Morgan would have, and the Treasury Department and now the DOJ, that's for the money paid. I mean, there's a number of people who paid him a lot of money.
Man, this is a bombshell, right? This is some very significant overlap. So where do you think this goes? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but it seems like you've got your finger on the pulse of a lot of these loose ends. And it seems to me like they're going to have to tug on these threads and see, how they unravel. And by they, I mean Attorney General Bondi, Director Patel, et al. They have no choice but to kind of follow the facts.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just as you can't, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein is, that he was found dead, but Ghislaine Maxwell was also charged and convicted and is now in prison for sex trafficking crimes. And everybody is wondering, and everybody knows, you can't sex traffic to nobody. So there must be a number of people who are involved in this sex trafficking ring. And just like you can't sex traffic to no one, you can't receive money from no one. And so all of the money that Epstein received, over $1 billion according to J.P. Morgan, that has a from line on the wire transfers. It's to Jeffrey Epstein. It's from somebody. And so those people, I am sure that is who Attorney General Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel need to be looking into.
This is pretty interesting stuff, Seamus Bruner. Now, the last time you were on, you were kind of outlining what your book, Control Oligarchs, is about, exposing the billionaire class, their secret deals, and the globalist plot to dominate your life. And it's such a well-written, I love the word, Control Oligarchs, right? It's a nice convention there. And the subtitle is fantastic as well, because I feel like since the time we spoke, we've seen that happen, right? We saw George Soros buy the debt, use backdoor deals to acquire the assets of a radio company that owns 400 radio stations, many of which are talk stations, some of which carry this program, and have slowly been changing some of that programming. And it appeared, at least, from my perspective, as an attempt to stifle the ability to reach people with certain information in the lead up to the 2024 election. Now, call me a crazy conspiracy theorist that wears tinfoil hats to bed, but I might be onto something. Maybe I'm not. But this is what your book is about, and we've kind of seen that happening. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and it continues to happen, and I'm very wary of a lot of these tech guys. I love what Elon Musk is doing with DOGE and what he's done for Twitter. But there's a lot of other tech guys, and they were all mentioned throughout the book. I would consider them control oligarchs who are trying to cozy up, and that, in a way that's natural. Of course, when the administration changes and you have a trillion-dollar company like either Amazon or Meta with Mark Zuckerberg, but they are all trying to cozy up, and I trust that Donald Trump.
They were all there at the inauguration.
They were all there at the inauguration, and so information control. There's a big chapter on information control and mainstream mind control, buying up of all of the media companies. Controlling the information is the name of the game. It's the number one thing that they must control first. You saw it during COVID. They had to have total informational control, and it's great right now that Twitter is free and you have free speech on Twitter. But I just wonder how long this will last. And it's important to keep your eyes on the guys with all the money and what they're going to try to do. I don't think that Trump is going to let them pull a fast one, but I do know that they're going to try.
Seamus Bruner, I want you to let everybody know how they can get a copy of the book, one for themselves, one to give away, as well as how they can keep up to speed with the work you're doing at GAI, the Government Accountability Institute.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. My name is Seamus Bruner, SeamusBruner, SeamusBruner.com, at Seamus Bruner on all platforms, X, Instagram, all of that. And then Control Oligarchs, you can go to controloligarchsbook.com. And I've been posting some very interesting Epstein-related court documents. There's actually a big trial separate from what Attorney General Bondi will be exposing of one of the J.P. Morgan CEOs who was very close to Bill Gates. I have a lot of stuff on Bill Gates and Epstein's relationship in the book, so you can get all of that at controloligarchsbook.com.
Outstanding. Well, my best to you and everybody at the GAI, Peter Schweitzer and the rest of the team. Keep doing the work that you're doing. It's fantastic work, and we appreciate it.
Have a great night, Rich. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Seamus. And amigos, your calls and more are coming up right now. The phone number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, for Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We're about to get to your calls. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. But before I do, I want to talk about today in history because pretty interesting stuff here. Listen to this. Today, right, so February 25th, 1791, the first bank of the United States was chartered by Congress. It happened to be in Philadelphia. This I love. Samuel Colt patented the first revolving gun, the first of the 6-shooters in 1836 today on the 25th of February. This is a good one too. 1870, February 25th, 1870, Hiram Rhodes, Revels, is a Republican from Natchez, Mississippi, and he was sworn into the United States Senate, becoming the first black American to sit in Congress. How about that? 1870. And we were just talking about J.P. Morgan a little while ago. They founded the United States Steel Corporation in 1901 on today, February 25th. And here's the last one. Today in 1964, Cassius Clay, also known as Muhammad Ali, stunned the boxing world with the TKO of Sonny the Bear Liston, winning the World Heavyweight Championship. How about that? So what a big day, right? Many people think it's just a mundane Tuesday, February 25th. Not so fast. Now, I want to go to some of these stories here. We talked about a few things already, right? We talked about Zelensky potentially capitulating. Trump is interested in copper, right? And a lot of people are interested in copper. People have been stealing copper left and right for quite a while. And today, Trump decided yet another investigation or a probe into potential new tariffs on copper imports to rebuild U.S. production of copper, which we use in our electric vehicles, military hardware, the power grid, consumer goods, all that. And that's good. Trump is looking to thwart what his advisors see as a move by China to dominate the global copper market. I'm going to pause right there because let me tell you, this is the only way to win, right? You have to be in the fight to win. China is playing this game where they're pursuing global dominance in so many areas, right? Whether it was their Belt and Road Initiative, whether it was the buying up lithium and cobalt mines all over the globe, whether it was trying to buy up ports all over the world to control shipping routes. I mean, you name it, they're in the dominance game. If China's in the dominance game and we are in the isolationist, mind your own business, we shouldn't be in everybody's backyard, America first game, and we don't pay attention to what's going on and we let them dominate the globe, guess what happens? They win, we lose, right? So I love that Trump is paying attention to what's going on, looking to thwart China from making these moves. And that's great because China is trying to dominate the global copper market. So he signed an executive order today in the White House directing Secretary Howard Lutnick to start a national security probe under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. Now, this is the same law that Trump used in his first term to impose 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. The White House briefing, one of the people there, one of the reporters, shared with Newsmax on condition of anonymity, saying that any potential tariff would be determined, or at least the rate of it would be determined by the probe into what's going on with copper, adding that Trump preferred tariffs over quotas. So I think this is a good thing, right? This is a good thing. Now, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro said the investigation would be completed very quickly in what he called in Trump time. Navarro said China was using state subsidies and economic influence to gain control over global copper production in much the same way that it now dominates steel and aluminum production. Like I said, this is what they do. That said, the countries set to be the most affected by any new U.S. copper tariffs would be Chile, Canada, and Mexico, which were the top suppliers of refined copper and copper articles in 2024, according to U.S. data. Now, I'll say this. People are, saying, there are places like Vietnam and Mexico that are, breaking into the manufacturing business. And there's a lot more things being made there because it's cheaper to make them outside of the United States, textiles and that type of thing. And when you scratch beneath the surface, you know what you find out? You find out that, in fact, these factories in China and Vietnam or Mexico and Vietnam are Chinese. They're Chinese factories because, again, they're in the global dominance game. They want to run the show. So I love that Trump is trying to cut them off at the path because you have to. If we're not competing, if we're not being adversarial toward them because they're being adversarial toward us, we're losing. Anyway, your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with your thoughts, your calls, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ. And I just want to share with you, President Trump today also, one of the many things he talked about in that press conference he had in the Oval Office, he suspended the security clearance of everyone at the law firm that assisted Jack Smith in his witch hunt. Now, is this going after political enemies? No, actually, it's not. The Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bove, made the case that these guys were doing things to supplant the rule of law, and as such, they no longer have security clearance. Just as James Clapper and John Brennan and all these former spooks no longer have the ability to, A, have security clearance, and B, enter these government buildings. So I think that's a step in the right direction when you talk about, those people are worthless once they don't have security clearance. Right? They can't hold themselves out there as somebody that has security clearance. Anyway, I want to continue our conversation with my man, Paul. Boise, Idaho, KBOI. Paul, go right ahead, sir.
Thanks, Rich, for taking my call. We talked a little bit last night about the Congo and the 100 people that got hacked at that. I couldn't stop thinking about that all night long. And part of the problem was, we're talking about materials in the ground. And there's cobalt that was found in the Congo. And we had an outpost, the United States had an outpost, which they capitulated to the Russians, oddly enough, who have quite a foothold in the Congo. Anyway, I was disturbed by the fact that there was 100 people that were killed, but you never did say what race they were, whether they were black or white.
I don't know.
That was bothering me the most.
Yeah, that wasn't in the. I mean, I could care less. For me, these are my Christian brethren that believe in Jesus like me, and they were killed for their belief. And I think that is a horrific, horrific sin. Paul, thanks for your call, brother. Godspeed to you. And amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. God bless you, America. If this is the end of the road, we'll talk again mañana. And if it's not, then stick around. There's more to come. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, and welcome. This is the, what do we call this? Tuesday, the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. I'm hoping that you'll join us on our late night national town hall conversation. Here's the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And where do we begin? Well, the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City, which was, an icon during Fashion Week, and it's right across the street from Lincoln Center and right there in Columbus Circle, just, an iconic part of the New York skyline, has a big neon light on top of its Hotel Roosevelt. And it became a migrant haven, home for the illegal aliens in New York City. And then they took over many hotels in the Times Square area, Hell's Kitchen area. Anyway, today it was announced that that stuff is coming to an end. Now, I've talked to a number of people in the last couple of days. We talked with Doug Burns, former chief of the criminal division in New York for the Department of Justice, and spent the last 38 years as a defense attorney. And he's pretty fair, right? He's, when it comes to the law. And he says that Emil Bove made some technical snafus in his decision to end the prosecution into Mayor Eric Adams. But it wasn't on the basis of politics or anything other than this was a bad case. This was lawfare, just like they did to Trump. I respect the opinion of Doug Burns and of Emil Bove, honestly. And I will say that I was critical of this, because I want to see the book get thrown at Mayor Eric Adams. I just don't think he's done the right thing by the city. He wasn't my guy in that race. My guy in that race was Curtis Sliwa. And I think we might have another matchup of Curtis Sliwa running against Mayor Adams, and if Mayor Adams continues in the race. And I want to have a conversation with Curtis, and hopefully we could do that in a little bit. But one of the things that I want to talk about before we get into that is what is happening with all of these protests, because there's been some leaking going on, right? There's been some leaking in terms of ICE raids, and this, I think, is bad. It's very, very bad. Now, last night, Secretary Kristi Noem was on the Fox News channel, and she announced that she has found some of the ICE raid leakers. And she says they're going to be fired, which is a great first step. And I think ultimately what happens is, I think our knee-jerk reaction as people, as we the people, is to say, put them in jail. But I don't know that it's always a jailable offense, especially when the Attorney General of the United States isn't trying to put them in jail. And what I mean by that is it's not me trying to be soft on things. This is me trying to be practical. Right? For example, for as long as I can remember, there's always been a lookout to most crimes. And the lookout usually has code words, right? They base them on TV shows, typically, right? There was the TV show Adam 12. So if the cops were coming, somebody would yell 12. There was a TV show called Hawaii Five-0. So if the cops are coming, somebody would yell 5-0, 5-0. Right? Whether you were playing dice, whether you're selling drugs, whatever your illicit activity was. Drinking in public, smoking weed, whatever, right? People forever when they know that the cops are coming, they give a heads up to the people in the community so that they don't get in trouble. This, I think, in New York City can land you an additional charge of obstructing governmental procedures, which is nothing more than similar to urinating in the street type of offense, right? A disorderly persons type of offense. But anyway, the point that I'm making is I don't know that there's an inherent crime. It might be a violation of some sort of rule, right? But I don't know that it's an actual crime for you to say, hey, the cops are coming. Now, it is a crime, typically obstruction of justice type of thing, if you're interfering with a particular investigation, right? And you're actually obstructing it. And I guess that's the bridge that they have to cross in proving that you actually weren't just saying, oh, look, 5-0 is coming. And I try to put myself in every set of shoes here, right? So the other day I saw something on social media, and it was a sign that you could put on the back window of your car, and you could program it to say a lot of things. And one of the things that they were advertising was, like, slow down, cop ahead. I thought, imagine that, right? Well, I went to CPAC last week, and speed limit in New Jersey is 65. But guess what? You can drive at 80 on most of the highways in New Jersey, and you'll be keeping up with traffic, and you likely won't even get pulled over because most cops aren't pulling you over for 80 unless it's the last day of the month and they've got to hit their quota, right? So this is kind of what I'm used to. But as you go in Pennsylvania, I've never even seen a cop in Pennsylvania. So there's no rules on the road there. But when you go down 95 and you go from New Jersey into Delaware, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the speed limit is 55 in Delaware, and it's strictly enforced. Like, the minute you get over that Delaware Memorial Bridge, there's a state trooper on their highway patrol waiting for you, and he's doing like 52 miles an hour. So if you go any faster than him, they will pace you, and boom, you're done. And I thought to myself, what is going on here? Why, in God's good name, and forgive me if I offended you with that statement, but why are we making people drive at 55 miles an hour? And the only thing I could come up with is they want your money. Because the next thing is one of those things that clocks your speed, and it tells you how fast you're going. So if you're doing 56, 57, 58, it starts flashing, and it says speed enforced by radar, at which time my GPS says speed check ahead, speed camera ahead. So what does that mean? That means every time you take one of these trips and you trigger that device, they just mail you a fine. And they're going to make $50, $60, whatever it is. They're going to make that on you. They're going to say, oh, look, it's no points. Your insurance won't go up. It's not even a moving violation. You're good. Just give us our $50. It's almost like a toll. Imagine that, $50 toll to drive through Delaware. It's bad enough they actually charge tolls at the Easy Pass. Now, this to me is insanity. So I would love for somebody to say, yo, 50 on a block. We've got, 12. I want somebody telling me you can drive a little faster than 55 and not get a ticket. Now, I understand these are different things and that, most people don't get emotionally inflamed about we're losing our country and our culture and all of these things when we're talking about speeding. But that is the way people feel when we're talking about illegal immigration. But in the same way, if somebody says, hey, la migra, excuse me, I don't know that is necessarily going to be a crime that anybody could effectively prosecute unless it's, like I said, an intentional obstruction of a particular arrest or something of that nature. So putting, myself in every position of this, I've got to say, I'm glad these people are fired that are leaking stuff. But when you are in the government and you're leaking stuff, I think that should be a crime all day long. That's not your fellow man on the street telling you, hey, ICE is over there. Make sure you got your papers. That's very different than that, right? This is actually people being turncoats. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that's treason. It's sedition, which I know a lot of people would say, but I'm not going to say that because I've read those statutes and it's a bridge too far, right? It really is. I know for most people, common sense tells me that's treason. That's it. They're going against the country. That's great, but that'll never stick in court. So I'm glad Bondi's firing people. My hope is that she can prosecute some people. I think you need to make examples of people in order for them to realize, you know what, this is not a good idea, and it actually serves as a deterrent. And until we see some of that, I think, people are not going to be as deterred. Anyway, I want to talk about the leakers. I want to talk about the Roosevelt Hotel. I want to talk about a bunch of things. So keep it locked right here. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Asylum Seeker Arrival Center at the Roosevelt Hotel on West 46th Street has certainly seen busier days. And now its days are numbered. Compare now to scenes like this in the spring of 2023 when the former hotel turned into an asylum seeker and humanitarian relief center at the peak of the migrant crisis. Hundreds of thousands of migrants came through the doors for services and shelter. But now the mayor says it's no longer needed.
We will have some form of intake, some form of way of placing them back, place them on their feet so that they can participate in the pursuit of the American dream.
The Roosevelt and more than 50 other locations like it across the city are expected to close sometime in June. City Hall saying the numbers justify the change.
The mayor says right now New York is dealing with an average of 350 migrants each week. Compare that to around 4,000 a week at the peak of the migrant crisis. The Roosevelt served as a centralized intake center for the city. Migrants received legal assistance, medical care, and reconnection services. Mayor Adams noting late today, most migrants that came to New York checked through the Roosevelt at some point during their journey.
Over the 223,000 migrants that entered went through a well-organized process of getting them through the system and processing almost 75% of the individuals that came into our care.
But a change now in the city's way of dealing with migrants that the administration calls a milestone. In Midtown, Gus Rosendale, News 4 New York.
So the Roosevelt Hotel is finally closing. Thank God. But is it too little too late? I don't know. But I want to get the opinion of somebody who's intimately involved in this. I'm talking about somebody who was there on the front lines protesting against the shelter that they put at the Floyd Bennett Field, who was there outside the Roosevelt Hotel, who's been arrested, I don't know, something like 70 times or something like that, because he's bringing it to those in charge when he has to bring it to them. And he brought it to Eric Adams in the last election. He didn't win, but he's back at it. And my endorsement and my hope is that Curtis Sliwa will win the mayoralty in New York City in this upcoming election. Curtis Sliwa, welcome back.
My liberty-loving Latino brother, in solidarity, I put my hands across America from the Roosevelt Hotel right next to Grand Central Station to all of you, an iconic hotel named after Teddy Roosevelt. It was turned into a sanctuary for illegal aliens. They were never vetted. They were never checked for any kind of viruses or medical conditions. And they got everything for free. And guess who paid for it, Rich Valdez? The sucker taxpayers of New York City. And now it's closing. You know how much we paid the country of Pakistan to buy the Hotel Pennsylvania?
How much?
Take a guess. Take a guess.
I remember that was right across the street from our studio, and it was once nice, and then it became very dilapidated. And I don't know. I'm going to go. It was probably something that was worth like $50 million.
Oh, you're very good. You're very good. You should really be involved in real estate. You should wear one of those mustard-colored jackets and go out there and sell real estate across America. You know, that's what Black Lives Matter has become, big, large mansions. You got a real future ahead of you, Rich.
Thank you,
But
Curtis.
imagine, we bought that broken-down hotel from the country of Pakistan. They obviously could not be trusted. We then started putting the illegal aliens through that system there to be outsourced to other communities, which destroyed those communities. And there were no-bid contracts. Now, imagine this. Why would you have a no-bid contract? A no-bid contract allows you then to give kickbacks to your cronies. So remember, Eric Adams, who was the chameleon, at that time he was the Biden of Brooklyn. Now he's rocking his MAGA cap. The guy just can't be trusted. So it's a good thing that the Roosevelt Hotel is closing. But you know where I was earlier in the day when that announcement was made?
Where?
I was in El Barrio. I was in the South Bronx, where the same mayor has opened
Ruben
up.
Diaz?
That's no. I was on 141st and Bruckner Boulevard, not near Ruben Diaz Sr., but rather I was there to try to close a new migrant facility that has been opened up to house 2,100 single able-bodied young men of military age with nowhere to go and nothing to do. So while they're closing the Roosevelt Hotel, they're running a shell game. Now they're opening up a new shelter in an area that already has a jail, halfway houses, rehab centers, normal shelters. It's in a poor and impoverished area, mostly blacks and Hispanics. And enough is enough. So you see, Eric Adams may have fooled the rest of America, but he hasn't fooled me nor the people of New York City. That's why he will not get reelected mayor of the city of New York.
And listen, I hope he doesn't, because he seems to be having a lot of help by way of good luck, right? Because of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You've got Kathy Hochul coming for him. And all of a sudden he gets good fortune because he happens to deal with a deputy attorney general that protected Trump, or defended Trump, I should say, as his defense attorney, and says no more lawfare. And I was a little bit upset by this because I thought, let the case play out. But apparently most legal scholars agree. They say, you know what, that particular case, they were digging up old skeletons, that there was no crime, and they're trying to make a crime out of nothing. But I'm thinking, how far off is Eric Adams from Gold Bar Bob Menendez, right? If you look, you're going to find Curtis Sliwa.
Let me tell you something. As you know, the nickname I gave him from day one, the swagger man with no plan, wearing $5,000 customized suits each day. You say to yourself, how could he afford suits like that? How could he be partying to the break of dawn, which he would do each and every night into the morning, and as he said, have a lot of swagger? Just like you, Rich Valdez, he had swag.
Yeah, he ain't got swag like me. Folks, we're coming right back with my man Curtis Sliwa, God willing, the next mayor of New York City, running against the infamous Eric Adams. And we're going to talk about the swagger man with no plan when we return. Don't go anywhere.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
After careful consideration, I have determined that I will not commence removal proceedings at this time. My strong belief is that the will of the voters and the supremacy and sanctity of democratic elections preclude me from any other action. I cannot deny the people of this great city the power to make this decision for themselves.
That, of course, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, all of a sudden she's a constitutional scholar, and she's all for the republic and allowing people to make choices of their own. Curtis Sliwa is our guest. And Curtis Sliwa, I remember like yesterday riding a parade float with you through the Bronx near that McDonald's where you started the Guardian Angels, through Staten Island, through Queens, marching in the Puerto Rican parade and really hitting the streets to get the word out, to get people to vote for Curtis Sliwa, or if you're Puerto Rican, Curtis Silva. And here we are again. Curtis, what's this campaign going to be like, and what's different this time around?
Well, first off, what the governor was talking about, I'm not going to do that to the people. The people should have the right here in New York State, New York City, recall. There is that effort in 20 different states.
Yeah.
The citizens, if they are not satisfied with who they elected, they go out, collect petitions, and you have a recall vote like they always do in California. Look, they had one against Newsom, the governor. They didn't take him out. They have one against Bass, the failed mayor of Los Angeles. They probably will take her out. And I think you need to have that as a tool to remove somebody who clearly has either been ineffective or corrupt. That's what we desperately need in New York. Would have used it against Cuomo when he was governor, when he fled after fearing impeachment. A guy named Bill de Blasio who was too busy smoking blunts on the back porch of Gracie Mansion during his 8 years as mayor. And naturally, the swagger man with no plan. But in terms of myself, it's a lot different now this time. You learn from your first election. In this case, a loss. Most people who run for political office lose. It's very rare, like you saw in the case of President Donald Trump, where he won the first time. Remember, when he was on that stage and they referred to him as President Trump, he was the most surprised guy in the world, while Hillary Rodham Clinton was laying in a fetal position, wondering what went wrong. So you learn from those mistakes. And what I've understood is I got to put together a team of advisors, consiglieres, not only men and women who are expert in their fields that they've dedicated many, many lives of study and work to, but more importantly, be understanding. You can't be pretentious. They know the subject matter better than you. They're advising you. You ultimately, as mayor, make the decision. But you also have to have people who are bad news bears, who are going to tell you things that you don't want to hear, and you're going to have to suck it up, listen, and then do something about it. Most politicians, they surround themselves with yes men, yes women, who tell them how great they are, who deify them. And thereby, that begins the self-destruction of the individual who's supposed to be taking care of the concerns of the people. You can't take care of the concerns of the people if you're an I and me kind of a person, unwilling to face constructive criticism and unwilling to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Curtis Sliwa. And in terms of the tactical aspect, right? I think that's more of the macro. But in the micro, what are some of the nuances of this race that you can immediately implement? Things you might have learned or stumbled on the first time around.
Yeah, old school politics has people on the news, people in the newspapers, sort of unveiling who they are and what they're going to do. It's not the way people consume most of their information now. You got to micro target them. You got to find out what are their normal likes and desires. What is it that you can cater to by appealing directly to them, and then making sure that you have a plan that they can look at that's going to assure them that you're the right kind of person to make that happen. And when you micro target, you're more likely to get that person to scrape the barnacles off their backside, get their rear end gear, and actually go out and vote, which a lot of people don't do in off-year elections right after the presidential election.
Yeah, no, that's true. People are all kind of election fatigue and don't want to mess with it. Folks, we're on with Curtis Sliwa, not only a radio mentor of mine, but a founder of the Guardian Angels, the safety patrol group in New York City, a radio extraordinaire in New York City, and now candidate for mayor in New York City. Curtis Sliwa, for everybody that's listening, and may want to dig deep into their pocket and make a donation to you, how do they do it? Where do they go?
Yeah, don't be throwing nickels around like manhole covers. I could use some scratch because political campaigns cost money. So just go to Sliwa, that's SLIWA, Sliwa for NYC.com. That's Sliwa for NYC.com. You can see everything I stand for, the goals and aspirations of the campaign to make me mayor. And then most importantly, to give you an opportunity to assist us, especially when it comes to donating money, which we need in order to continue to get our micro-targeting message out to people that we feel we can get to vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, Curtis Sliwa is somebody that as a kid, when I was a kid, not when he was a kid, when I was a kid, I remember riding a subway with my mom, and an altercation broke out. And I remember my mom pulling me real close to her on the subway, on the D train. And when we got off that train, she was looking over her shoulder, making sure the guy who was about to stab the other guy was gone and the coast was clear. And she looked at me and she said, I really wish the Guardian Angels were on this train. That was Curtis's group. Curtis Lee was somebody that was super kind to me. Him, Mark Levin, John Batchelor, when I got into the radio business, really took time to pour wisdom into me to help me hone my craft as a broadcaster. A decent man, somebody I can tell you I've known for the last 7-8 years, and he's the real deal. He's a mensch, as people say. So I want to make sure you know the man behind the persona that you see on the radio. This is a guy who works tirelessly for people, not really interested in working for himself. And I think that's the type of quality you need when you're running for mayor. So consider making a donation, helping his campaign however you can. And Curtis, again, give them the website one more time, please.
That's Sliwa, SLIWA for NYC.com. And just remember, this is one politician. You can't buy me. You can't bribe me. You can't rent me. City Hall will not be for sale when I'm mayor.
Outstanding. Curtis Sliwa, Godspeed to you. You have my unconditional endorsement. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Gracie Mansion and hitting the campaign trail with you whenever you need me.
My pleasure, because the liberty-loving Latino, he's bilingual. He gets them coming right ways, left ways, right down the middle, and that's what I need to propel me to victory.
Amen. Curtis Sliwa, everybody. Curtis, good luck, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you, Richie.
You got it, brother. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, reactions, and all of that stuff are coming up right now. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I love your show, everything you do. So what an honor, really, to join you and your listeners tonight.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Any update in terms of who's been tipping them off?
Absolutely, Sean. I have found some leakers. We are continuing to get more. They will be fired. There will be consequences. And remember, when they leak information to the press in order to blow an op, they are putting law enforcement lives in jeopardy. They are risking their lives and putting their families in the position where they'll have to live without those individuals any further. So you bet we have used every tactic that we have. If you remember, we talked just last week about how I'm using polygraphs to go after and to really interview these folks because we are a national security agency. I have that tool I can use. Also looking at their emails, looking at their communications. And it's amazing how these bureaucrats who have an agenda to stop the work that we're doing to bring safety to America, how they will sell each other down the river if it's just to protect themselves. So don't worry, I am doing everything to find these leakers and to get rid of them so that we can do our work and our law enforcement officers and agents can do it safely.
That is Secretary Noem, Homeland Security Secretary, saying exactly what she said. She said, we would hate for these people to have to live without their family members. She's letting you know they will get locked up. And this is what I was saying before. I think you need to make an example. You have to, go beyond the proverbial slap on the wrist. People have to realize this is, again, it's not going to be a firing squad, Gitmo, or treason. But you've got to go for, I think, the harshest penalty you can and, let it work itself out in court. But you've got to make a statement. You've got to make a push. Otherwise, you're, I don't know, I feel like we're doing everybody a disservice. So kudos to Secretary Noem for doing the right thing because ultimately she's right. This job is designed for protecting the American people. Now, speaking of protecting the American people, listen to this. This is a report today. Texas officials issue warning after a rancher was killed by a cartel IED. That's an improvised explosive device, a bomb, in Mexico. This is literally a terrorist attack, according to the victim's son. And this is a pretty big deal. These ranchers working near the southern border have been urged to exercise extreme caution when traveling through Mexico after one of their own was killed just recently by an IED. Antonio Céspedes Salidierna, 74 years old, a Texas rancher who worked on both sides of the border, was driving near his ranch in Tamaulipas, Mexico, just south of Brownsville, Texas, when he was killed by an IED, and that was reported by KRGV television. Also killed was Horacio Lopez Peña. Ninfa Griselda Ortega, Mr. Lopez's wife, was hospitalized with injuries. Unbelievable. Now, in a statement released by the Texas Agriculture Commissioner, Sid Miller, he said the deadly explosion was part of a growing threat posed by cartel activity along our southern border. He encouraged ranchers and those who work near the border to exercise extreme caution. Listen, all I can say is thank God that bomb didn't go off in the United States. These people were just designated a foreign terror organization. Imagine if they set off a bomb and kill an American on American soil. That's a big deal. As it is, I think it's a pretty big deal. But it happened in Mexico, so it's not like they came here to bring us the fight, right? Had it been that way, I think we'd probably be seeing drone strikes right now, which is likely what we might need, right? To get to that tipping point where Trump says, all right, just go after the fentanyl facilities. Let's go. And I think that's everybody's trying to avoid an all-out war. But it may be what we need in order to really put the kibosh on that problem. Let me see here. Mr. Céspedes, who died, was a U.S. Army veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's terrible. Oh, the son, the surviving son served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he was also injured by an IED that was deployed while he was active duty. What a shame. Well, I'm grateful for his service. Sorry about what happened to his dad, and it's terrible. But he left us with this quote saying, I consider this a terrorist attack because if I went to war to fight terrorists, and I'm seeing the same thing here, in my opinion, this is a terrorist attack. Let me tell you. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Terrible. And there's been several armed confrontations between these organized crime groups like the cartels, and they leave these explosives behind, roadside bombs and whatnot. Just very, very disheartening. Anyway, I'm going to get to your calls momentarily. Again, the phone number 833-482-5337, plus a couple of thoughts I've got before we get into our next topic. And something I want to talk about in the upcoming hour that I think is of particular import is making America healthy again. RFK, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Bobby Kennedy Jr., has established something called the Make America Healthy Again Commission. And a lot of people are asking, what will this mean for medications that treat depression and anxiety, like SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or Adderall and other stimulants that are designed to treat ADHD? Well, we're going to find out if antidepressants and ADHD meds are being overprescribed, if they're not being prescribed enough, and what the result of it is going to be when we return in the next hour. Plus, your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. I want to give a big shout out to one of my listeners out in Jersey, in Ridgefield area. His name is Martin Cohn. Marty, big shout out to you, my friend. And we've got a couple of folks on the line right now. Let's see who we've got. We've got Montana. We've got Pittsburgh. Let's start with Pittsburgh because they're first on the list here. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Dorian, go right ahead.
Hey, I want to thank you for taking my call and enjoying the show tonight. But if people would stop eating in Chinese restaurants and all the Chinese that are kind of working there and are somewhat not totally paperworked out in one way or another, either on green cards or just hiding, if they would all leave, the people that own these restaurants or the fronts for these restaurants wouldn't be able to keep them going, and that essentially would get people that don't belong here, give them reason to leave the country or go back to where they wouldn't be under that kind of a scrutiny.
Yeah, well, I don't know that we have a huge problem with Chinese illegal immigrants. I presume we have it with everything, given the open border that we had. But what I really can't imagine, Dorian, is people stopping the consumption of Chinese food. I don't eat a whole lot of Chinese food, but there was a point in my life where I did, and I love that stuff. Nothing like some good old fried rice, especially those chicken wings they make, man. So all I could say is that, I doubt it very much that that'll happen. And you know why? Because for years we've been talking about, if the American employers pulling up in those nice, expensive pickup trucks would stop hiring these guys outside the Home Depot, we wouldn't have a problem. That's not happening either, right? So ultimately, the reason drugs come into the country is because we have Americans that like to use drugs. The reason that they traffic children in this country is because we have Americans that like to abuse children. The reason we have what we have is because there's a market for it. And those are the things that we have to work on curtailing. But Dorian, thank you for your call, brother. Shout out to you and KDKA, America's oldest radio station. Everybody else that's on hold, stick around. We're coming back another amazing hour with you all, the American people. And of course, again, big shout out to my man, Marty Cohn out in Richfield, New Jersey. Big shout to you, my man. And we're going to continue straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, and we're taking your calls on open phones across America. So if you've never called the show, tonight's your night, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And President Trump signaling that we are that much closer to a deal on minerals with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, who, was posturing a day or two ago saying, sure, I'll do a mineral deal with you where we give you $500 billion worth of minerals and making you a 50-50 partner as long as you admit me into NATO. And, of course, El Trumpito laughed heartily at that because that ain't going to happen. But the reality is he wants some security assurances and not necessarily the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances, which is where the United States pledged to protect Ukraine from Russia as long as they gave us their nuclear weapons. And guess what they did, pendejos? They gave us their nuclear weapons, and now look at them. I never would have given up my nukes, but they did. And here we are. So this is why I'm always sympathetic to the Ukrainians, despite the tutu-wearing President Volodymyr Zelensky, because it's not about him per se. It's about the United States and our word and keeping our word. And I feel like, giving them money is not keeping our word. Keeping them safe is keeping our word. And that's what we need to do. So my hope is that we can renegotiate that in some way. But anyway, that's part of the big deal. Of course, now Trump looking at other minerals, other resources, other precious metals like copper, saying that he wants to potentially put a tariff on copper to generate some income. Of course, he also said that he's going to be issuing green cards. But these green cards are high-level green cards, so high-level he's calling them gold cards. And these gold cards are going to be sold off to the highest bidder. And in comparison, if we look at the amount of people admitted to the United States, 10 to 20 million people admitted to the United States during Joe Biden's tenure, you would think, oh my gosh, there's no way. But if you think of those same 10 million people buying a gold card from Trump for $5 million, now you're making money, right? Something like $50 trillion, I think is the number he was floating around. So I don't know if there's a market for that or not, and if that many people have it, that kind of money. But fascinated by the idea, fascinated by the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I'm really intrigued by a lot of this stuff because I think this is really making America, A, very unconventional, very new, and B, hopefully very successful. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about President Trump just about a week and a half ago announcing the Make America Healthy Again Commission. Listen to this.
In 2022, more than 40% of children had at least one chronic health condition, and today nearly 80% of young adults do not qualify for military service, in large part for health reasons. Think of that, 80%. Something is wrong, and that's why immediately after Bobby is sworn in, I will be signing an executive order establishing the President's Commission to Make America Healthy Again. We have some great people on that commission. Chaired by our new secretary, this groundbreaking commission will be charged with investigating what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic illness, reporting its findings, and delivering an action plan to the American people.
That is El Trumpito delivering an action plan to the people. I love this. I think America's health is an incredibly important thing for many reasons. number one, we've become very fat and lazy. By we, I mean me, and yes, some of you. Not good. Now, I've lost a bunch of weight, and I've been going to the gym, although not as often as I'd like. My New Year's resolution was to go to the gym 5 days a week, and I'm still making it 2 to 3 days a week, right? I think I made it 3 days last week, and then I was away for a few days, and now this week, I haven't been yet once. I've been doing a little working out at home, been curling out with these 25-pound dumbbells. My arms are kind of sore, but you need more than dumbbells to get a good workout in, right? So the point I'm making here is that we have a huge problem on our hands. He's right. In the words of the infamous Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're like a bunch of girly men. Yeah, we've got a bunch of girly men, and we can't be girly men. We're the United States. We've got to be John Wayne, right? We've got to be the real deal. And Russia's not going to respect that. I mean, clearly they didn't respect that when Biden was in office. And he wasn't even overweight. He was just weak. China's not going to respect that. We need to make sure that we're on our game. And that part is important. And that's why I think RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy, is the right guy. Because he's been through this. And have you seen it when this guy takes his shirt off and starts doing push-ups at 70 years old? I'm like, man, I need to go work out with this guy. Anyway, listen to now sworn-in Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Last Thursday, President Trump signed an executive order to establish the MAHA Commission to study what has caused the precipitous decline in American health over the past 2 generations. So we will convene representatives of all viewpoints to study the causes for the drastic rise in chronic disease.
Love that. Yeah. And many of us are going to, hit the fast forward button and say the drastic increase in chronic disease is attributed directly to doctors writing prescriptions. Doctors writing prescriptions for things instead of fixing the problem. We medicate the problem and, try to alleviate a symptom. And that's why I want to talk about, in particular, something that Kennedy brought up. He talked about antidepressants. He talked about ADHD medication, stimulants, and SSRIs. And I think this is, for me, this is a very important thing to discuss because I think these pills, I don't have anything against Adderall and ADHD stuff, but I do have something against the antidepressants. And honestly, I think both of them can eventually cause more harm than they're worth. And ultimately, there's got to be a better way, or at least we should try some better ways. And I feel like we don't try. I think there's a reliance on medication. So I want to talk to a psychiatrist, in fact, America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. And looking forward to speaking with her straight ahead. She's scheduled to be with us in a little bit to talk about MAHA, Making America Healthy Again. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The number of young people taking antidepressants has grown massively since the start of the pandemic. A study published in Pediatrics says people between the ages of 12 and 25 received antidepressants at a 64% higher rate than before the pandemic. And it's even higher for girls between the ages of 12 and 17, which saw a 130% increase since March of 2020.
That report from ITI, are doctors overprescribing SSRIs and ADHD medicine? That's the question that I want to get to the bottom of. And our expert guest is America's psychiatrist. You know her from Court TV. You know her from this program. She's been involved in lots and lots of expert witness cases over the years. And she literally wrote a book on dealing with the crisis, the terrorist crisis that we had, the attack of 9/11. Dr. Carole Lieberman, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So, Doc, Bobby Kennedy is here. turning big pharma and healthcare and the health administration of health industry, I would say, kind of on its head with these non-conformist, unconventional ideas like we shouldn't be over-prescribing medication, we shouldn't just focus on alleviating symptoms, but really treating illnesses. And it's really quite revolutionary. What are your thoughts?
Well, it shouldn't be revolutionary. It was actually the way it used to be. First of all, I'm thrilled that he got what's the word? Got confirmed. Thank you. He got confirmed, especially since I watched some of the hearings and they were brutal. And I think his main thing is that he wants to look into things, like not to just accept things how they've been happening all along, and especially because Big Pharma and the FDA, there are all these people who are in bed with each other who, just wink, wink, and agree, let medications go through, for example, of course the vaccines, but other medications, let things go through so that Big Pharma can keep making money, and really they don't check the safety of everything enough. In fact, today it's really interesting. A woman who was one of the heads of the FDA just left the FDA and took a top position at a big pharma company, which, when you think of the timing of this, it's really ironic because here she's proving that what RFK Jr. has been saying is correct. That in fact, the FDA and Big Pharma are in bed with each other, and they sort of help each other. And perhaps she was afraid she was going to be fired because of her position in the FDA, whatever. But still, it just shows how they are like one and the same.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's a problem, and it has to be looked at. And there seems, at least in my opinion, to be an over-reliance, like you said, on prescribing medicine, all sorts of medicines. And I told this story before, but I'll share it again quickly. When my daughter was young, my oldest daughter, when she was like 3 years old, we took a trip to the Dominican Republic. And I remember while I was there, she was playing in the dirt or whatever, and she got an ear infection. And she'd gotten these ear infections before when she was like, 3-4 years old. And I remember saying, oh, man, she's getting a fever. She's holding her ear. She's starting to whine a little bit. And I out loud, I said, man, I wish we had the pink stuff, right? Which is what the doctor always prescribed whenever she got these ear infections. And my ex-wife's uncle was a pharmaceutical guy. And he said, what pink stuff? And I was like, the pink stuff. And he was like, oh, like amoxicillin? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, why would you give that to your baby? And I was like, because her ear hurts. And he was like, that's insane. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, how is she going to develop any immunity if you kill the fever and don't allow it to happen? And I thought he was nuts, but I went with it. He explained it all to me. And I was like, that's funny because my pediatricians never mentioned this stuff to me. I was a new dad. And I thought to myself, it makes sense what you're saying. So we did it, and she never got the ear infection again. And, and I thought to myself, we're getting scammed. And that was 2003.
Yes. I know that is a big problem, that doctors give out antibiotics like they're candy, and it does inhibit us from developing our own immunity. Same thing, actually, with, I know RFK has sort of said he's not against the measles vaccines and, the childhood illness vaccines. But, when I was growing up, we all had these illnesses, measles and mumps and chickenpox and all that. And I think it did really help our immunity. The other thing is that with the border being open, there are so many people coming across with illnesses that were wiped out from America, for many years, like measles and like tuberculosis and other kinds of infections. And now they're bringing them in because they weren't vaccinated and they weren't treated properly and before they came over and so on. And so that's a big problem. But yes, to go back to what you originally said, I as a psychiatrist, I know these days, people think psychiatrists, well, it's true actually, after Obamacare, the pay, I think I might have mentioned this on your show before, but the pay for the insurance companies decided that it's a lot less expensive to pay a social worker or a psychologist or a marriage and family therapist to do therapy than it is a psychiatrist, because a psychiatrist goes to medical school and has a lot more years of training. So when they cut down what they pay for therapy sessions, for 45 to 50-minute sessions, a lot of psychiatrists, too many psychiatrists, decided, well, if I
doing
do
it
therapy, I won't be. I'll lose my house. I won't be able to afford to live anymore. And so they became pill pushers, and they see people for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you're lucky, a half an hour, and they tell you to come back in a month to 3 months. And they give you, all they do is give you pills. And the people come back, and then their problems aren't gone because they didn't do therapy to get to the root of the problems. And so what do these psychiatrists do? They give them more pills. And people are on these days. It's so crazy, because I remember when I was a resident at Bellevue, we used to talk about that, how this is polypharmacy and it's very bad. You get all kinds of side effects, and it doesn't, one medication cancels out the other medication, and it's just, this is a sign of bad psychiatry. And this is what's happening now, unfortunately, all over the place. I don't do that. If someone wants to see me, they have to come at least once a week for therapy, and then if they also need medication, they give them medication. But this is a major contributing factor to why there are so many crazy people walking around in America.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a huge problem. And, people right away, they blame the doctors. And I'm sure that, your AMA and others are somewhat complicit in this, but it's really the drug companies producing these drugs and pushing them, and then you get Obamacare and the bureaucrats to start regulating it and saying, no, you can't bill $500 for this anymore. You're down to $1.25, and that's good money for some people, but like you said, not good money for others, and it doesn't make sense anymore. And you get people that are crazy walking around. And I'm glad you said that, because I'm reading an article, New York Times, AP, CNN, they're all reporting this, that Psychiatric Times, they're all reporting that the FDA has just expanded access to clozapine, a treatment for schizophrenia that seems to be promising. Now, this is your wheelhouse, right? Schizophrenia and other types of mental illnesses. Tell us about the effectiveness of this and your thoughts.
Yes, I read something about that. Now, they are just acting willy-nilly. There's they think they can get away with anything, and they have been. Clozapine is really only used, or should only be used, for people with severe schizophrenia who have not responded to any of the many other antipsychotics. There are many medications for schizophrenia and any kind of psychosis. And so you're supposed to try the other ones, and only if the person doesn't respond to these other ones, in other words, if their delusions and their hallucinations and all that aren't taken away by these other medications, then you do clozapine.
Well, hold that right there. We're going to continue that conversation and loop in the comments made by Secretary of HHS, Bobby Kennedy Jr., who says we got to look at everything under the sun when it comes to our medication, our water, our food supply. I love where he's going with this. We're going to come right back with Dr. Carole Lieberman, America's psychiatrist. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
According to some estimates, 90% of healthcare spending today goes toward managing chronic disease. When my uncle was president, it was zero. We didn't even have drugs for chronic disease then. And now it's become a burden that's threatening to sink our country. So my main mission at HHS, in which I hope that you will all join me, is to reverse the chronic disease epidemic in America.
That again, Bobby Kennedy Jr., Secretary RFK Jr., talking about chronic disease in America and his mandate, if you will, because of his campaigning with President Trump to make America healthy again. Our guest is Dr. Carole Lieberman, America's psychiatrist. And Doc, we've been talking about all of this. We've been talking about the FDA finally putting through certain drugs that can be helpful, but not overprescribing those that, that seem to be the go-to for a lot of people. And there's been talk about SSRI antidepressants, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors that have become increasingly popular, like Lexapro and other ones that have recently been under scrutiny because they were, I guess, marketed as, oh, they're fine, they don't have any side effects, and then later you find out, oh, they actually do have some side effects. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Adderall and the other stimulant drugs that people are concerned about. For those people like me that have ADHD, and I'm completely unmedicated, minus maybe a little coffee or maybe a lot of bit of coffee. But outside of that, I never took well to the medicine. What are your thoughts? Are these things getting overprescribed, or do you think there's a judicious approach to prescribing these meds?
Well, if you think about what I was talking about earlier, that psychiatrists have turned to just giving people prescriptions instead of giving them therapy. That kind of, you can see how things are being overprescribed, because that is really that's essentially the main tool that most psychiatrists, I don't want to say all, but that most psychiatrists have in their toolbox. And so, they want to help the person, and they don't want to spend an hour doing therapy with them and getting paid $100. And so, getting paid much less than what they normally charge. And so, here it is, just take another pill. Now, I just want to go back to the clozapine for a minute. The reason why that was the drug of last resort, why you were supposed to try everything else for schizophrenia or other psychotic disorders, is because of the side effects of clozapine. It has tremendous side effects, much more serious side effects than the other antipsychotics. I mean, for example, changes in the blood, changes in the blood cells, blood dyscrasias, it's called, problems with your liver, all different kinds of side effects that are much more serious. So that's why, that really is not, it's going to be horrible if people just throw that out on the first time someone comes to a doctor's office. But as far as SSRIs and Adderall, let me say Adderall. Adderall is given out way too frequently, particularly for ADHD. And a 3-year-old kid, a 5-year-old kid, their parent thinks they have ADHD or ADD because they're moving around a lot, and the teacher complains that they aren't that they're a problem in class, because they're distracting the other kids. And so they take the child to a doctor, and typically they take it to their pediatrician, who doesn't really know anything about psychiatric medication. And the first thing that happens is they get Adderall.
Right.
And Adderall also is not just. Sometimes it's necessary, but there are so many other things to do before that. For example, the first thing to do really is to find out why the child can't sit still in class and why they have certain learning problems and so on. Now, it can be a brain issue, or no neurological issue, but it could also be because their parents are getting divorced and they're very upset and anxious.
Stress.
And what's going to happen to them. So you have to find out what things are going on in their life before you just jump to the conclusion that it's ADD or ADHD. And then they have found that kids who start taking Adderall, when they're young, later on they are much more likely to become addicted to drugs, to drugs like methamphetamine, because that's what they had, with the Adderall. So there's a danger. And SSRIs, there is this bandwagon. People are jumping on the bandwagon to blame SSRIs. And it really isn't. I mean, I have prescribed over the years, I've prescribed SSRIs a lot of times. I prescribe other antidepressants too. But nothing horrible ever happened when I prescribed it. But you have to sort of know from experience and from knowing about the drugs and all of that, you have to try to pick the drug that is most likely going to work. But when, and Prozac is an SSRI, and of course, Prozac was a big deal some years ago. Everybody was on Prozac, right? The happy pill. So it isn't necessarily bad, but the things, they say, SSRIs cause school shootings. Well, SSRIs don't cause school shootings. It's the mental problem, the psychological problem that the person has, and the overindulgence in violent video games that cause, and the dysfunctional family, and there's a whole profile. It's not just the SSRI, but the main thing is it's the child is getting a drug and not getting therapy. That's the main problem.
Outstanding analysis, folks. We're on with Dr. Carole Lieberman, America's psychiatrist. And Dr. Carole, there is so much to unpack here, but you've done such a great job of it. I'd like for you, if you can, just to let everybody that's listening know, where they could find some of your appearances and your analysis and how they could follow you on social media.
Sure. Well, for my appearances, I have a YouTube channel with lots of, I keep a list, or I keep video clips from different interviews, so you can check that. Also, I'm a Twitter addict. In the mornings, I look at some news sites, and I pick the thing that I'm most angry about, that gets me most upset, and I tweet about it. Also, of course, my websites, terroristtherapist.com or expertwitnessforensic-psychiatrist.com. Those are some other places as well. There's a lot to be angry about in terms of what's happening with people not wanting to accept all these changes that Trump and Elon Musk and RFK Jr. are trying to make. Trump is trying to save the country from going bankrupt, and people are fighting against him, and they're upset. And Elon Musk sent out this email, as I'm sure you probably talked about it.
Oh yeah.
Asking people to write what they did in the past week, and people are complaining about that. Well, if you can't write, answer an email with what you did at your job that the government is paying you for in the past week, that is a problem. Either you weren't doing anything, or you weren't doing enough, or your name is there and it's just a fraud.
Absolutely right, folks. Dr. Carole Lieberman. Doc, I want to thank you for being here. Make sure you give her a follow. Check out her website. And Doc, maybe we can have you back in the next week or two, because there's so many psychological and psychiatric topics to discuss, and there's just never a shortage of those. I'm just looking at a story now. Can't get into it now, but just listen to this headline. Man who ate part of his victim's brain granted supervised release from a Connecticut psychiatric hospital. He apparently also ate this person's eyeball.
Yes.
Just crazy stuff. These are the types of things we have to unpack.
Who is crazier, this person or
the people let him out?
Go?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully we could regroup and talk about that in a couple of days. I appreciate it. Dr. Carole Lieberman, Godspeed to you, ma'am. You're
very welcome.
All right. And amigos, your calls and more are coming up right now. Open phones across America, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to say to you that I really appreciate what you're doing for people and their state of mind and their viewpoints on the airwaves every night. I really do appreciate it.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with open phones across America, where you, all the American people, get to weigh in on what's going on in America at night. Now, let's hit the phones, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to check in with Mel, Saratoga Springs, New York, WGDJ. Mel, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. So much to unpack with mental health and substance abuse. I would have loved to have had the opportunity to work with Dr. Lieberman. I was a mental health and substance abuse counselor for 14 years. Had to get out of the business because I wasn't making enough money to survive. I am now a truck driver in order to make as much more money than I was working 80 hours at 2 different rehabs. However, the medications that are prescribed to people today, I've got to wonder, as I was talking to your producer about, my wife and I were watching a film on TV. It was a 1.5 hour film that lasted 2 hours because there were 12 medication commercials throughout that film.
Oh man,
Okay,
I know what you're talking about.
You gotta wonder. You gotta wonder. At being in the field myself, how I was pressured by family members and my clients to get them medications. So these people see these medications on TV, go to their family practitioner, which she's right, they have no idea about mental health. They beat them down. They give them the medication, get back to me to see how it works. They deal with the side effects or decide not to take the medication at all. There's so many things that are wrapped up in mental health and substance abuse in order to try to keep people even medication compliant. You know, because what happens with people with a lot of times with people with bipolar illness, they'll be put on medications. It takes a while to find the right amount of medications.
Dosage. Yeah.
Right. They end up feeling great, and their mental illness says, you know what? You don't need these medications. Stop taking them.
Right.
They might not like the side effects.
Then all
or they
hell
don't
breaks
want to
loose.
be right, and they don't want to be looked at as being, say, crazy. And then what happens is that their bodies, their brain becomes adapted to those medications, and you put them back on the same prescription, and then many times it doesn't work.
It doesn't
so now
work.
we're
It's
back
lost its
to
effectiveness.
Right. So now we're back to trying to find the right amount or prescription for them.
Right. No, I tell you, this is a struggle. And it's not just mental health medication, right? It's anything. I remember when my dad was older, my mom, they started taking all these different, at one point, each of them was taking like 15 different medications. And I thought, this is too much. And I made it like a part-time job of mine to figure out how can we reduce the amount of things that they're taking? Because it's like I said, not just mental health. We're I think overprescribing on anything and everything, and sometimes you need it. I would say even most times you might need it, but I don't think you need it every time. And I think we've got to become a little bit more conservative in our issuing of prescription medication. But that's coming from me, a non-doctor. Mel, thank you for your call. I appreciate you. I hope to speak with you again really soon. WGDJ in the building. Let us continue. I want to go to Robert, Malvern, Arkansas, KARN. Robert, go for it.
Dude, I would like to, originally, I want to go with the Guardian Angels. I was in the Navy in the late 80s, and they started hitting the West Coast.
Yeah.
God bless those guys.
Let me give you a fun fact, Robert. If you were in the Navy, I guess maybe you were at one of the Navy academies in San Diego, but the Guardian Angels appeared in Death Wish 2 with Charles Bronson. There's a scene where he leaves this like second floor apartment that he rents, and you could see them in the background because there's so much crime in the area. They're there with their white T-shirts and their red berets, and that wasn't staged. Death Wish was a low-budget film, and they happened to be there really doing the anti-crime work that they did, and they happened to get caught on camera, and, it just made its way into the movie. So how about that? But you're right. It's amazing work that they did in the 80s, and they still do it. Many of them that patrolled back in the 80s are not on patrol anymore, but there's a handful of them that still are. like Curtis and 13 and a couple other guys that I've personally met, these guys are just fantastic. So, yeah, kudos to the Guardian Angels. Shout out to Curtis Sliwa. And you too, Robert. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. KARN in the building. And thank you for your service to our nation and to the Navy. Amigos, more from you across America, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Let's go to Josh, Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Josh, go right ahead quickly.
Hey, Rich, it's your licensed cosmetologist buddy here in the ATL. I want to say, ironically, the most destructive drugs in America are the prescribed ones, followed by alcohol, which is on the side of trucks and billboards. People need to get out. They need to exercise. They need to be kind to their neighbors. They need to volunteer to help others. They need to walk their dog. And they need to stop staring at these things in the palms of their hands and look each other in the eyes, say, please, thank you, I love you, and I'm sorry. And that would be a real good start.
It's like a modern-day call to love your neighbor. Yeah, listen, I agree with you. I was in the rat race for a long time, doing radio in New York City, living across the water in Jersey, and I would go into the studio back and forth. Then I went to another studio in Westchester, which is another hour away, and I would leave my house at, honestly, 6:30, 7 in the morning, and come home sometimes, either 10 o'clock at night or if there was covering a late show, I would be home, 1 a.m. And it's a rat race. And I realized that I didn't care to take a walk in the park and look at the leaves turning colors and doing all that because I was too tired. But I dated a girl that really opened my eyes to that stuff. And let me tell you, she was all about being kind and being chill and being whatever. And it's a game changer. It really is. It makes you closer to the salt of the earth, right? And to your spirituality. It's just really doing things the right way when you stop and smell the roses. So I think that's good advice. Josh in Atlanta, Georgia, keep doing your thing in the salon. And we continue with our speed round. Shout out to WGKA, by the way. Let's go to Ken in Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Go for it.
Good evening, my brother. Rich, you kind of stole my thunder when you talked about that Hispanic American getting killed in Mexico. So I'll let that go for another day.
Okay.
I actually have one disagreement for you for the first time ever listening to you.
Yeah.
I think that anyone caught putting up a poster of an ICE agent, their family, their phone number, their address, you are doing that for one purpose, to cause them harm and only harm. So I think it should be a federal crime, and it should be a mandatory year in jail. You're not going to plea bargain down to nothing. I don't care if you've never got a jaywalking
Ken,
ticket.
my emotions tell me I want to agree with you. But I look at it this way, and I think, just imagine if I said Anthony Fauci is killing people, and this is where he lives, and give him a piece of your mind. I would like to be able to do that because I don't like Anthony Fauci. And finding out his salary and his address and all that is likely public knowledge and publicly available information. But I don't want to go to jail for a year if I'm doing that. And I get it. These guys are in law enforcement. They should be protected. I really do. And if people are getting involved in a particular case, then they should. And we get to look at it. I'm not on one side of this or the other. I'm just saying, don't take away my right to criticize Anthony Fauci, right? Because we're doing something else. Because ultimately, we don't want to lose our First Amendment. But I'm with you. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.